Hey everyone, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. I'm here today for a little bit of a check-in after my sort of booktube summer vacation that I took. You will have last seen me post my video in July about disability in children's literature, but I actually filmed that way far in advance because I did a lot of traveling to visit family this summer. Didn't want the channel to be totally dormant, but it's like my first time sitting down to film since maybe like the end of May, beginning of June. And as it is now mid-August, forgive me if I'm a little bit like rusty with how to do this, but things have been going great. I hope that your summers have been treating you well as well, and that those of you who have been living through these wild heat waves and just extreme weather visitations are doing okay. It's been kind of a rough one out there for weather and climate and whatnot in the summer. But I wanted to give you a little update on what I've been reading and also a little bit of a life update as well. And then we'll conclude with some of my reading plans for this autumn. So the life update, let's go ahead and start with that first, which is just going to be that we are going to be moving house again. As some of you know, if you've been here for a while, I have a daughter. She is now almost 8 months old, and we are going to be moving back to my hometown in Florida because we will be a lot closer to family members and a more like extended kinship and support network of people to help us care for our baby and care for us. It is really, really difficult to have a baby, period, but it's also really hard to just manage a lot of this stuff when you don't have that familial support nearby. So that is currently on track to happen later this fall. So we will see how filming and uploading goes, which is partially why I am sitting down to do this right now. So a lot of what I have spent time reading this summer has been my big books for Big Book Summer. The first one that I finished reading was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is a sort of thrillery book that takes place at this like outdoor summer camp. One of the campers, who is a girl, goes missing in the timeline that is the 1970s, and you find out pretty early on that her younger brother also went missing at the same camp in like the 50s, 60s when he was really young. So the thriller is kind of trying to figure out what is happening to the missing kids while getting a lot of the like twists and turns between the more upper class people who own the land that the camp sits on and the more lower class people who are their employees who actually run the camp and are familiar with the land and know the land. This book was just okay for me, and I think that's mostly because it was a thriller where I kind of figured out whodunit really quickly, so it didn't really read as like thrilling and exciting for me, unfortunately. But this book's wildly popular. I think it's getting some kind of like TV adaptation really soon, and I'll probably watch and enjoy that. I can see this being a much better TV adaptation than I do see it being good as a long book. Big Book Summer, the book has to be over 400 pages. It's really hard to sustain momentum and tension for a thriller for 400 pages, but that's just me. I really did love the next two books that I read for Big Book Summer, which were, let's see, The Tainted Cup and A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. These are both kind of like mysteries set in a fantasy world where there are these like Leviathan creatures that make landfall and basically are like forces of nature that threaten this empire, this civilization, but also the civilization runs on these like human enhancements, basically. They function essentially as like magic, technology, whatever you want to call them, but they enhance and augment human senses and abilities, and they're made out of the parts of these Leviathans. So during this series, we follow a duo of investigators, Denius Cole, who is a sublime that is really good at, like, he has this magical enhancement that lets him, like, basically have an extreme version of a photographic memory. And Anna, who is his, like, superior investigator, and she is just hilarious. I really love the dynamic that the two of them have. I think the mysteries are very well plotted and they really do keep you guessing while also actually leaving enough for you to be able to figure out the mystery yourself. I did figure out the mystery in the first book, and I felt really satisfied that it took me most of the book to get to that point, but then the payoff was so good. The second book, I think that the mystery was slightly weaker, but it was okay because the mystery was still great and the world building was so much stronger. These books also traffic a lot in themes of like empire, the importance of characters that are civil servants doing what I call the boring, unsexy work of government that keep kind of our societies chugging along and functioning, and just making sure that, you know, somebody is doing things like filing the paperwork to make sure the rich pay their taxes and people get an equal shot at justice and fairness in the courts, or as close to an equal shot as they are able to. Really love these series. The third book is out. I just bought it. It has blood in the title, and I really should be able to remember that. I will make sure I put it up on the screen somewhere, but that is probably going to be another big book that if I can read before the end of August, I would definitely like to. And then, unfortunately, my fourth big book was a DNF. I DNF'd The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman. This is supposed to be a book that is a King Arthur, like Arthurian story, where we're following this knight whose name is Colum, and he's not really a knight, he's more of a wannabe. He leaves his like small village because he wants to go to the Round Table, meet King Arthur and the knights from the stories, and join them on their quests and adventures. But he arrives too late. The battle between Arthur and Mordred has already happened. Everybody is dead. All that's left is a bunch of like disillusioned straggler knights who are kind of like the second and third rank of the Knights of the Round Table. That premise alone, I really thought I was going to enjoy. Unfortunately, it just didn't work for me writing-wise. There's this trend that I've noticed recently in a lot of like more contemporary fiction where the authors will legitimately just like spell out or explicitly state the theme or the moral or the point that they're trying to get across in the story, because I guess they just don't trust enough in their own writing or in the reader to figure it out. They feel the need to kind of bang you on the head with it instead of just letting the strength of their writing tell that story, or like the subtlety of the writing make the reader feel like they've figured something out. It feels a lot like reading like a freshman in college English essay where it's like you were trying so hard to make your main point so obvious and it just comes across as inelegant from these authors that have many different books under their belt and presumably editors. I mean, I don't know if this is just a trend that I don't like, or if this is kind of the lack of developmental editing or like enough developmental editing in publishing. And maybe if you've already gotten your book contracts, the editors are assigned elsewhere or they edit with a lighter touch. I'm really not sure, but that happened a lot in The Bright Sword. I'm really not a huge fan of it at all, and there just wasn't really enough there in terms of like characterization or plotting in addition to that really kept me hooked in. So I actually DNF'd that about halfway through. I'll show you what I'm currently reading in just a second. All right, as for what I am currently reading, I have a fiction and a nonfiction book going. Fiction-wise, I am currently reading Weird Sisters by Terry Pratchett. I thought that this was the first witches book in the Discworld, like, series, realm, extravaganza, whatever it is we're calling it. It's actually the second, but I don't think that's actually impacted my ability to enjoy the book. This is very much a sort of comedic treatment of three witches that are riffing on the witches from Macbeth, and this entire book is kind of a satire of Macbeth and Shakespearean theater and the theater in general, witches in general, while also bringing up some really interesting topics about the interplay between what it means when the kingdom is the ruler or the kingdom is a sentient entity in itself, It's really humorous. It is the third Terry Pratchett book that I have ever read, and it's reminding me that I really do need to spend more time with his books because I always enjoy my time with them. I will probably have to go back and read the first Witches book, but this one was a good place to start. And then I have a recommendation from my friend Alina over at Eclectic Reads. She recommended this book, Cattail: The Wild, Weird Battle to Save the Florida Panther by Craig Pittman. Craig Pittman is a journalist who wrote for the Tampa Bay Times, and he's written a bunch of books about like weird stuff going on in Florida. This book is pretty much exactly what the subtitle says, and it is about this like major conservation effort to save the Florida panther from extinction. This is a really wild time, y'all. The book opens with a group of veterinarians and scientists going out to basically tranquilizer dart a panther so they can put a radio tracking collar on it. They accidentally tranquilize it too quickly, so it falls out of a tree, smacks its head, and stops breathing. And the first chapter of the book is literally someone trying to resuscitate the panther using mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And it just goes from there. So I am further along in the fiction than the nonfiction, but I'm still really enjoying my time with both, having fun switching them off. I am also attempting to work on my like books that stuck with me this year. I may just wind up making one of those for the entirety of 2026, but we'll see what I can do with the move and all of that stuff going on. So that's what I'm up to currently. Right now, like I said, my plans for the fall and winter when it comes to reading are a little up in the air because I'm also right now in the process of trying to rehome some of my books and then pack the rest of them in preparation for this move. But I know I definitely am going to be participating in Shake-Tember here on BookTube. I've been eagerly anticipating some plans that we have going for that, and a lot of my Shakespeare books are going to stay out to the last minute. So yeah, let me know how you are doing in a comment down below, what you've been reading, what you've been enjoying. It can be anything. It can be books, television, movies, hobbies, whatever. I think I'll probably need to make a hobby update at some point too. Let me know if that's something that you'd be interested in, because I feel like within the last month I've sort of slowly started getting a little bit more back into some very basic hobbies after having my daughter and just getting to a point where I have maybe a couple hours uninterrupted during the day because she can take a long enough nap now. So yeah, let me know how you've been. I hope you've been doing well, and if you made it this far, thank you all so very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.